Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 15 of season 2 of Contact Lost, the Polish Warhammer 40 podcast, where we talk about the Polish and international competitive scene. I am Tweak, and today we have a treat for you because this is the last episode of the year, and we're going to try out some visuals for your viewing pleasure. This might end really well, but it might end horribly as well. So you've been warned. With me today, I have my trusty co-host. Hi, Joker.
Hi, Tweak.
And because we want to build a tier list of all the armies in Warhammer 40k right now, and we want to sum up the year with this, we couldn't think of any more cynical, honest, and matter-of-fact guests than Typhus.
Hello.
And Pumba.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, guys. It's good to have you. Thank you for agreeing to join us today.
Throwing shades, man. I love it.
Yeah, I know you wouldn't miss a chance. So good to have you. So listen, to all our audience, this will appear on YouTube with, as I said, some visuals. You will be able to see the tier list in the video. To anyone listening anywhere else, we are, of course, on all the podcasting sites, so Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so on. So I'll try to be clear about what army we are talking about so that you know exactly and you're not missing anything if you can't see the visual. So that's a little word of introduction. Now,
and I guess we can do a summary at the end for those not watching on YouTube, but using other media streaming services.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like a good idea. Hope we not forget. So yeah, just to show that we are not completely ignorant to the latest Warhammer community news, guys, what do you think about the announcement from, I think, today, that there are going to be seasons, that Chapter Approved is going to be released like on a semi-annual basis? Pumba, what are your thoughts about that?
I think it actually doesn't change that much from the release schedules we've had previously. However, it is very nice to have it as a absolutely sure thing that it will happen, right? Because one of the best things about 8th edition was the actual schedule of FAQs and Chapter Approved that were coming out regularly. And I think this is basically going the same direction. Instead of guessing when are we getting some updates or FAQs to the game.
Yeah, it's important to have a pipeline. So that's spot on. Typhus, your opinion?
Yeah, I both like it and don't like it for one reason, and it's the idea of having WTC, which is in August, 8th month. That's August, right? 8th month.
Yeah, it is.
8th. Yeah, I can never remember those. Anyway, so having that in mind, this could be a thing that will happen a month before the whole event happens. So it can either be that we'll play WTC on previous rule set, or either we will invalidate all the preparation and play on the new rule set and have to adapt a lot. So even though I like the clarity about every date that this will happen, maybe not even date, but like given month, I'm worried how it might impact the whole event and us choosing the team.
Yeah, I think it also depends on how game breaking the changes are each Chapter Approved now. Because we've seen
if they are like those now, I don't think it matters that much.
Yeah, because if you think about it, there was a Chapter Approved in previous year, I think, or maybe at the beginning of this year. It all blends. But that changed so little and just touched on the couple of secondary objectives, and it basically made no great difference to the way the game's played. So if they are more in the likes of that, I don't think it's gonna be
more like balancing patches instead of whole revamps of the whole idea.
Yeah, basically.
All right, Joker, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the guys. I think we need to see how big the changes are in terms of how they change the missions, etc. And yeah, I think that's the important bit. Whereas probably any points changes you can fairly easily adapt to, even though they might invalidate builds that someone has been mastering for a couple of months. And yeah, the reassurance that it will be happening in certain points of time, I think, is the biggest takeaway from all of this, because I think the community as a whole has been complaining this year when tournaments came back that Drukhari and Admech were just obscene, and they needed to be properly addressed, and it took a very long time before that happened. So all in all, I think it's a positive change, but yeah, obviously it depends how it's implemented.
I would add one more thing, that I'm not sure how they plan on making both this happen every 6 months and also on a quarterly basis provide those small balancing patches. I don't know if those two statements are contradictory. And one was like the initial idea, and now they actually revamped the whole idea to make it semi-annual. So we'll see. What I'm looking forward to seeing how the first patch will look like and seeing the impact of that.
Yeah, that was my first thought as well. How does that relate to the balancing patches that were supposed to be released quarterly?
Yeah, I have basically two worries with that. Because, first of all, well, all that you said is right. So it's good. It's good to have a pipeline, have something in place, know what to expect, and so on and so on. Yeah. But on the other hand, I worry that, already at this point, the entry threshold for this hobby, for this game, is so high. There are so many rules, so many changes, so many books. Like, if you want to play, I don't know, take Chaos now, if anybody wants to play Chaos, they have to bring like 7 books if you take into account all the Vigiluses and
whole library, basically.
Pretty much. And it seems that GW is going to continue with this trend where, all those chapter approved are going to be printed. I don't think they're going to go with purely digital updates, which I think should be the way to go, but nothing indicates that they are going to take that route. So there are going to be more and more publications, and whoever wants to enter the hobby today, he will have to first ask around, like, which points costs do I look at, which rules do I look at, and so on. So this, to me, it might lead to this rules and points bloat and book or publication bloat.
Yeah, and that was a
huge
problem in 8th, and
I can actually remember how everyone expected 9th to be a refinement upon the idea of 8th, but with less bloat. And seeing what happens now, basically, it seems like a joke because the bloat is already exponential, I would think. Like, so many supplements were already released without many codexes out, and it's not going to change. I think the only a clean way out of this situation is for GW to actually digitalize the system, fully digital rules,
or
like an app that points are the bare minimum. I'm gonna say the points are the bare minimum, and they should be a very quick update. And if they are printed as they are now, they are always like a couple months of late to the meta. And if we are talking about 6 quarterly updates and 6 months to the actual mission changes, then considering the logistical aspect of printing a book with points, they will never be able to keep up with that.
Yeah, they are probably doing the update for whatever it might be, May, June, July. They are probably doing it right now.
Exactly.
To make sure it goes through the whole system.
Yeah, that's the thing. And then, if you also take into account what releases usually look like. So there is a book. Turns out in that book, 1, 2, 3 units are overpowered. There's an errata in 2 weeks or something like that. So now, if you want to have a data slate on a quarterly basis, effectively you get a book at the beginning of the quarter. People play it for 2 weeks. Then you have an errata released. Then effectively people have 2, maybe 2.5 months to adjust. Then come the point changes or rule changes. Then 3 months again, another book comes out, another errata, and so on. I just fear that GDubs is going to get lost in this, and I'm perfectly fine with paying for those books. By the way, like if they come out every 6 months, that's great. I'm okay to pay for that if it keeps the competitive scene alive and kicking and so on. But when we pay twice a year for new rule, new points, I guess we will be allowed to expect even more than we do now that the rules are flawless and play tested.
Which is just not
I
going to
said
happen.
we are allowed.
Yeah.
I knew what your reaction was going to be, but I said we are allowed to expect, because if they charge us twice a year for a refined rule set or point set or something, then the rules have to be flawless. They should be play tested, and there is no place for blunders anymore, just because the schedule is so tight. So I hope that it works. Cool if it does, but knowing how GDubs does things, I have some doubts about it.
Yeah, I pray they don't take down the Wikipedia.
Yeah, exactly. And Battlescribe.
Because
Yeah.
honestly, I will never comprehend the catastrophe that was the Warhammer app. I cannot still believe how badly that went down and how useless it is to this day.
Yeah, this should be the
This should be
backbone
it.
of this
This should be
entire
it.
system.
Everybody expected it. Everybody was excited at the start of the edition to get an app, which was late half a year, and then it was absolute dog shit, which is just unacceptable, I think. Especially when you're now introducing the system that they are talking about, and this is exactly the place where the app would be the most useful.
Absolutely. And the last thing that I'm worried about is probably the smallest thing, but still, I would like to know your opinion about this. This is the players' expectations, because for now people expect the chapter approved. They yearn to get the publication. Now, if we have a quarterly data slate, every half a year we get a chapter approved, we will come to the point where people will have high expectations, but the game might be reaching balance, and at some point GW will have to release something just because people are expecting it, just because they made a promise, and this might lead to changes that people don't even want, because they just have to publish something, and nobody will pay for chapter approved with customize your land raider or something.
I would love to have that problem.
I don't think GW is obliged to do anything if they promise that. Like holy shit, how many there were times with Psychic Awakening that they just flipped the game inside out and didn't give a damn. They basically said that I think the Psychic Awakening was one of the weirdest and best examples of GW release schedule just not working, because they fixed the game by making everyone wait for their turn to get Psychic Awakening and then just resetting everything back to 0, which was just absurd. Also, after one of the best times in the balance and 40k history. But yeah, I think if they just decide to switch the system, they will happily do it and don't bother with the seasons anymore.
Yeah,
like we were fed couple of of chapter approved 2020 Mark 1 and Mark 2s, and you've had the Marks, and they now just completely scratched the idea of Marks and years and just throw it out of the window and just replace it with chapter approved Vigils or Enactment or whatever the new Warzone is.
Yeah, that's just a naming convention, so who cares, What matters is the Excel spreadsheets where you have the income, so that's it.
I mean, I really hope it works. I'm gonna be honest. I think the frequent updates are absolutely a good thing, but they will be a step into gatekeeping newer players into the hobby. And the only clean way out for the GW is, I believe, making it more digital and more accessible in this way. There's no other way around it.
If they don't do it, then they have to move production and printing to the UK.
At least.
Because COVID has shown printing in China might not always work out for the best. So
No, it was going great. I don't know what you mean.
How
yeah,
is- how is-
exactly.
I love the Genestealer Cult and Custodes codices
I was
that
about
were
to say.
released in December. Man, those were great.
These are some.
Mm.
Exactly. So yeah, okay, cool. I think that's a great summary of today's announcement. We won't really go into the topics of narratives and crusades and so on. That's we might make a different podcast just about lore and so on, but this is not the one. So let's get to the nitty gritty of this episode. As you all have seen, I mean our listeners, you've seen when you were choosing to watch this episode, the title says we were building a Polish tier list, or a tier list according to what our national team selectors believe is the strongest and what is the weakest. Let's get to doing just that. But before, again, I think it's good to explain what rules we are going to follow and how this is going to be done. Typhus Pumba, do you want to explain what is the reasoning behind your choices? Pumba?
Yeah. Okay, Pumba, go. You have been chosen.
Can you repeat the question, please? 'Cause
Yeah, I mean, what is the reasoning behind the choices that you are going to make in this tier list? I mean, because
I see.
we could have different approaches, right?
Of
Good
course.
for singles, good for
So,
teams, good for
I
whatever.
think the main thing here is we are playing WTC 20-0 differential system in Poland, which is like a hugely different thing from the standard ITC win or lose system. And this tier list will completely be based around that, which changes the tiers significantly in some cases, and not so much in others. Like there were armies that I think work in both, and there's a problem there, a conflict of any sort. But in some cases, I think the points differential makes some armies way stronger, and some armies just absolutely flop in the system.
Yeah, and I would add also that we might be thinking about singles, but still our perception is heavily influenced by all the team games we play. And
Yes.
even though we might mention what we see very, very important in the meta, our perception is still skewed.
Yes, I think it's important to remember that almost all of our experience, like most of our experience, comes from playing team games, either within
Mainly
like
screens with other national teams, or
exactly like
between
scrims
each other.
against other countries, or just practicing for the team tournaments within our community. So it's important to remember that we are also very much focused around team game.
Yeah, in other words, this is going to be subjective in a way, but in a good way. And we are not going to follow, the trends set out by, I don't know, Gunhammer exactly, where Gunhammer, for example, looks at the amount of tournaments that an army has won or something. The
Yes,
guys are
this
focusing
is-
on what they have experienced themselves.
This is gonna be highly subjective, but I also believe every tier list is highly subjective,
Absolutely.
even if
Mhm.
it's backed up by stats. This is not gonna be so much stats, but just general experience and the look on the end of the year Polish meta. I think it's
And
also important to
how
stress.
armies performed in all the games we've played with other teams as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's also I think it's very important to remember also that we are rating the Polish meta, and in some cases like what the other people are bringing to the tournaments will also significantly impact what you're bringing, right? So if there are more popular choices here than in the US or the UK or other ITC playing countries or other European countries, it will be reflected in the tier list.
Very much so. So yeah, without further ado, let's start with the first army that we have here on the list. So, Custodes. What do you guys think about this army? Typhus, let's start with you.
So I think this army fallen out of grace pretty quickly with like few latest releases. It was pretty good, and we even had it in our team comp till I think I don't know when we dropped it. I think it was after Grey Knights and Thousand Sons, as they were too strong in Mortal Wounds capacity for Custodes to handle. So we stopped playing that in the team events, and I think it was reflected also in all the single events in Poland that there might have been some Custodes played, but they didn't fare as well as previously. Even though Pumba had like one player in his team when we played Polish Team Championship, you had one Custodes player, but he had a lot of points in Sisters, for example.
Yes, it was a Custodes sister soup. But yeah,
and I would also mention one thing. Sometimes when we think about codices, we'll not think about pure army. We'll also think about some soups between the different codices.
Absolutely, yes. Custodes are like, I think they're interesting because they were very good for a very long time. Comparing them to, for example, Space Marines in Polish meta, I think they were holding very strong for a long time. They were providing very good lists and results in very many scrims we've played against international teams, like Germany, for example. I played Custodes versus Germany during one of our playtesting matches.
And people were really surprised and underestimated this army.
Yes, they were like they were not meta at all across the globe, and it was very much reflected in the pairings where people just ignored them or underappreciated what they can actually achieve.
So, from a team's point of view, like what would this army be good at? Taken in the Void, for example, is it more anti-horde? Is it more anti armor, or what's the focus of this army if you want to play it in team tournaments?
I think it's important to remember that the whole codex, as an old codex, is not in a great place in terms of internal balance. There were some units that were just pulling their weight so hard that they were just spammed in every Custodes list we've seen. These were primarily Virtus Praetors, so the jet bikes, and the Venatari from Forge World. And these two units basically made the core of the army work. So they were basically focused around very fast, very dangerous units, like Venatari and Virtus Praetors are both pretty strong, have pretty good damage output, especially with stratagems. And what's important is that the whole Custodes style of this style of Custodes list depends on your CP. You've got your offensive stratagems that you want to use every turn, like double the shots on Venatari, and you've got your incredible defensive tools, like Transhuman, -1 to strength because you're always playing the Shadow Keepers.
Ignore rerolls.
Exactly, stuff like this. So basically, they were very good into armies that just couldn't push them out of the table, and they were all OPSEC. Against armies that had a good profile for their profiles were good against them, which one of the armies that comes to mind is Necrons. They were the primary source of points for our Custodes across all the matches. They did so well at absolutely defeating them, especially during the Scarab Swarm spams and stuff like that. They were just melting to the Venatari left and right.
Yeah, even two of our players that played in the Greek Hammer 8v8 event, they got paired against Necrons like 3 times each in 5 games, and they both gained a nickname or like a group name of John Connor because they killed the Terminators a lot. I think like they got average of 18 points, if I'm not mistaken, in all
Something
of those
like
games.
That, yes.
So wow. Insane scores.
Basically, they were good against the meta. There were not very many armies, like they weren't the best, absolutely not, but they were decent enough to fit into the 8-man team and I think to catch good pairings with them.
And I think we'll mention a lot of armies that live and die by the meta.
Yes.
I think Custodes are one of the 3 armies that started really well in 9th, and with each release and them not still having an 8th edition codex is just getting worse and worse for them.
That's very much true. And they've
But
fallen
due-
out of grace very
Due to power
hard.
creep. Due
Yes.
to power creep in different codices.
Yeah,
Power
yeah,
creep-
obviously.
Power creep, yeah, but the actual codices that came out later this year were just pretty much counters to them, right? As we've said, the Grey Knights and Thousand Suns spam mortals like hell. The sisters
last
are
cannons.
just too goddamn cost efficient for them to handle. You've got your Admech last cannons that will just shred through the 4 wounds bikes and stuff like this. You've got Orks that are extremely cost efficient and have very nice profiles for killing them. So basically,
And
every
are also resilient to all the Custodes damage.
yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
All right, so I guess we'll have to wait for the new box and the new rules and points to see where they are.
Let's remember that they are just on the brink of their new codex,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
so we,
define the army.
So
to
our
summarize,
definition of them sitting in the meta will be invalid in 2 weeks.
That's
Probably.
yes, yes, completely. But I would fit them somewhere in tier B.
I can agree with that. Yes.
Because that's an army that we could still see getting into like team comp, but it would be very iffy depending on the current meta.
Mhm.
I think it's gonna be extremely hard to place with them in a singles event, like make a top 3 or top 4 cut. But I think with some souping, especially sisters look still spicy to me. I think there are builds that will do quite well. Like going 4-1, I think is feasible.
For next 2 weeks.
And
yeah,
then we'll see.
obviously.
All right.
Then it's
okay.
5-0 all the way.
Fingers crossed because they deserve it. But yeah, okay. B it is. Moving on, we have the infamous Adeptus Mechanicus. Joker, do you want to start with your experience with this army this year? How was it?
Well, not really, because I've had very little experience. I mean, in our local meta, we don't really have much competitive Admech players, to the point that I don't think I've played them locally. And then I don't think I've played them on any of the events I went to, so mainly the Polish Team Championship. So I don't really know how they've changed. Obviously, they've been obscene before the balanced data slate. But I'll hand it over to Typhus and Pumba to talk about where they are now.
So let me, just before you guys go into the details, I'll rephrase the question then, because it seems to me that this army was something that people, when building their lists, they were taking Admech into account. And lists that we've seen throughout the year probably reflected the dominant position of Admech. So would you agree with that? And would you also agree that, at this stage of building your own armies, you were thinking about how to tackle Admech in tournaments?
Yeah, I think at some point you had no way to tackle that army. Like, you basically had to pray. And that was the worst part of this edition. I think Pumba will back me.
I remember the old Admech, actually before the Codex, which was a menace, and then it got worse. No kidding. Like, actually that was the case. And I remember trying to pair against the old Admech on like a Cataphrone Breacher spam and stuff like this, and then just got ridiculous. So yeah, Admech dominated most of the year after the release, but before that, with their old Codex, I think they were still decent.
I think they were our first defender for a very long time, and we couldn't find a way to have it in a team 2 armies that could win against them.
Yes, they were just oppressively good, and they got better. After like 3 nerfs, are we now, or 4 even? I think it's 3. But yeah, the new data slate that came out now a month ago, or maybe even more, I think they tuned them down very hard. I think it is absolutely the army that lost the most out of the balance patch that GW came up with.
Both in singles and team tournaments?
Absolutely. I honestly don't know if they make the top 8 now. Yeah,
they are an iffy choice, but they are when compared to Custodes, they are still better than Custodes in the current meta. But it's also worth mentioning that even previous AdMech, before the balance changes, had some very problematic pairings like Thousand Sons, and now they are even worse. So some armies that were popular, and we've seen, for example, in Leicester to be even more popular in single-use events, are becoming a huge problem for AdMech.
Basically, both they get hit by both new codexes and the meta shifting, and the actual nerfs to them. So they go independently and by proxy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think now they land either at the top of B or at the end of A tier. Well, somewhere in between.
I agree with that one.
They are definitely better than Custodes, but they have so many iffy matchups, and like the power level of the whole codex is just not there.
They require a very skilled player right now because they are shooting army that doesn't really have that much reliable combat. So you need to utilize your shooting like optimally to make sure you can play. And they are more prone to bad luck, as all purely shooting armies are.
Yeah, I think that last summary puts them in B, just because they are not an army that an inexperienced person could pilot. So if you have the skill, and if you know how to do it, they can still be powerful, and top of B sounds like a good place for them. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yes.
All right.
Also, I think it's important to it's pretty late to mention that, but I think there are two ways to judge the strength of an army. One is through the lens of general power level of the codex, like if a new player picks it up, what can he achieve? And then there's the other way, what is the skill ceiling? And the absolutely best the army can do piloted against other armies piloted like at the same skill level, which is high. And I think mostly I am looking towards the second option. So always judging codex at the highest skill level possible.
Yeah, if they are playing against other armies played by top-notch players.
Pretty much, yes.
I think that would put AdMech in A, wouldn't it?
Yeah, in that sense, I would say
it's in power.
I think the bottom of A is very fitting, I think.
Yeah, it's good. It's good in hands of good players, but in hands of average players, you will struggle. In my opinion.
But then you also said that you don't. Pumba, I think, said that he doesn't believe they fit in the top 8 anymore. Don't you think that S and A are more for the armies that could be potential team picks?
I don't think we should delve that much into it. We still have plenty of armies, and
true.
we can later adjust some things after having more thought through conversations.
So I'm moving into A for now. All right. Next up, Imperial Guard or Astra Militarum. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
They just struggle, right?
Yeah.
There's no
D
easy.
and move on.
Yeah.
They are. I think there were some actual. There are players of Guard in the recent Polish tournament in Warsaw, and they didn't do too badly due to the skill of piloting them. But they are one of the armies that struggles absolutely the most in the current state of the game. They didn't get much from their supplements. The core of the book seems just dated and weak. The costs of the tanks and the other units just isn't there compared to the new stuff. They are just in dire need of update.
So straight to D?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think there's much point in going deeper into this. Next up, Blood Angels.
I love me some Blood Angels. I think the Blood Angels got hit like a ton of bricks with their new supplement, especially in the field of like stratagems and the tricks that army has. They have all of the Space Marines. I think it's one. Now is the time to talk about Space Marine as a whole because we are delving into some supplements.
Yep.
Space Marines have good rules. I do believe many supplements have incredible rules, but their main weakness is being overpriced as all hell.
Sadly true.
I think the only army that has more overcosted units in some cases are the Custodes.
And Guard.
And actually, yeah, Astra Militarum, the Guard. But otherwise, I think they have the absolutely most disgustingly expensive units. Maybe Craftworlds as well, yeah. But the problem with that is all the other codexes that are in this field are old codexes that will get updates. Space Marines got hit by pretty much 3 waves of constant point nerfs during the edition. And in their current state, they just don't have the strength to trade well with almost any army, which is their main weakness. And in this sense, if we are talking about 20-0 port differential, high skill ceiling plays, I think most of them will fit into the tier C. They are definitely not as bad as Guard, but they will struggle against a lot of good opponents just because you can get absolutely destroyed if you make a single mistake or some dice rolls just don't go your way.
And it's also important to mention that we always think about WTC terrain. So pretty dense terrain where those armies that people feel like a lot of dreadnoughts are not effective that much. So you need to be able to trade well, and there are no very clear lines of shooting. Even though I think me and Pumba both agree that the shooting from those dreadnoughts is still miserable.
The Redemptor dreadnoughts are my pet peeve. Like, I hate them. I fucking hate them.
And I think the problem of this army is also that it's very much an elite army because I think the most, at least, I am talking from the perspective of Space Wolves, the biggest slot, the most bloated slot is elites, and you would like to take as many as possible. But in order to run a battalion where you can take a bunch of them, you need to pay the 300-point tax of troops, which hurts, and the troops are really the ones that do hardly anything. So
yeah, you basically pay 3 CP for losing 300 points.
Very much so.
Like you pay 300 points to get 3 CP, which I don't think, which I think is the reason we saw a lot of Space Marine armies, if they were fielded in our screams, were actually running in a Vanguard detachment or Outriders, etc., and not fielding any troop units, as they are like absurdly weak.
Yeah.
Like one of the weakest units in the game, those intercessors.
Especially for their points.
Yeah.
Right. So is it C then?
For now, for Blood Angels, as the Blood Angels actually, I think, are C, like definitely there, but I think they are still one of the stronger choices. I've played a local tournament with Blood Angels recently, and I've had some fun, which I cannot say about some Space Marine chapters that I've played also recently, which we'll come back to very much shortly.
Or even now, could they have been Black Templars?
God damn, I hate the Black Templars.
So,
well then, up next.
Conveniently.
At least
I think they are the exact opposites of Blood Angels in terms of their supplement design. By which I mean, while the Blood Angels are all about the pure strength and power and strike, and not many tricks, but at least they just deliver absurd amounts of damage if they get to your to your lines and combat. The Black Templars are very much a tricky army, like that has couple of stratagems to manipulate your stuff, like the default push, which is a 3-inch normal move in your opponent's fight phase, which is primarily used like this, or like giving obsec to your unit. But Jesus Christ, they lack so hard in the offensive department. Like they have a pretty good vow that makes their whole army 5+ invuln and like small transhuman. But in case of offensive power on your like shooting, your dreadnoughts, all the stuff that you want to bring while using the army, they are just lackluster. You have to count so much on just having a the best rolls you can possibly have, or you will fall flat dealing with
Yeah,
your top armies.
And if you want to bring like a big blob of OPSEC models, you would play Dark Angels. And if you want to play shooty Dreadnought list, you would play Deathwatch. So like they do not have a niche, in my opinion.
I don't think so, no. I'm gonna be honest, I hate them. Like after playing 3 or 4 games with them and struggling so much to kill anything on the table against, and I've played, of course, I've had to play against like Orks and Admech and stuff like this, and Custodes, I think, with Dreadnoughts. So just the most absurd like anti-tank high durability shooting. I just struggled so much in those games and hated every minute of it. I think they are still C. They aren't Guard, no way, but they are worse than Blood Angels for me.
Okay.
Agreed.
So is it D or C then?
C, absolutely C.
Mm-hmm.
See, but higher than Blood Angels.
Lower, even.
Yeah, lower, obviously.
Okay. All right, moving on. Joker, I have to go with you first for this one. Chaos Demons, an army that you've played throughout this year. Tell us all about it.
Well, starting with, I think that Demons are one of the 3 codices who I mentioned with Custodes that started out pretty well in 9th, but then with each release, things just got harder and harder for them. But I'd still put them at maybe the bottom of B or the top of C, somewhere between there, just because of Be'lakor, they still have some sense sometimes. At least from my experience in playing in the Polish National Team Championship, quite a number of teams did take Demons, obviously because they can play lots of troops that are fairly effective, having lots of OPSEC bodies, and then Bloodletters sometimes actually do manage to kill something, although with almost every release having some source of -1 damage, they've obviously been hindered. Yeah, so that's pretty about it. They're fairly average, but you might see them from time to time, and if you get the right pairings, then well, you might just get a good score.
All right, so bottom of B, top of C. Typhus, your take.
I haven't seen enough of the Be'lakor lists, but the previous lists like Keepers, etc., just don't work in the meta. So I would say they are still better than Marines because they can play against Marines. And Be'lakor for Marines might be very tough to kill at times. But other than that, I still don't see them doing that well. They have few really nice units that work pretty well, but then people learned how to play against them as well. So yeah, I would say they are somewhere in C. How about you, Pumba? Like I wouldn't even consider them in the team comp.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say they are in B because I wouldn't consider them in team comp right now, especially after the latest updates to Knights that they were pretty good as a combination with War Dogs.
But that's I think Chaos Demons are a tough one, but I do appreciate the fact that they can side incredibly well. They can make a very much focused list. Either I think there are 2 main avenues. Either on the like big model spam, we're talking Be'lakor, maybe Keepers of Secrets, maybe the chickens, the big Lord of Changes, or you can go the Horde way. I don't think any of those 2 are good in the meta, which is the problem. But considering them, they are definitely not top 8 material in the current state of the game. But if I had to bring like a local team to my team to like Polish championship, and I had a Demons player, I think they can absolutely do work there just by siding into one of those 2 avenues. And there will be pairings that they will do incredibly well in. And for me, they are the bottom of B. Just for that. Just for the ability to completely focus your list in one direction.
Okay.
And through that, they can actually pull off some results, especially if you can tailor the pairings for them. In singles, they will struggle way more, I think. They just they got obliterated by the current releases, I've got to say.
It's going to be really interesting what GW plan to do with them in their codex, because they need some help, a lot of help. But on the other hand, it is one of those most thematic codexes that can actually be really interesting if the rules are written well. Many players have them, I think, so many players would be thrilled to be able to field that reliably. So we shall see. For now, B, tell me if I should move something. I put it in B with the caveat that it's bottom of B.
I think it's very well fit there.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Next up, we have Renegade Knights or Chaos Knights that took the most recent tournament in Warsaw by storm. So, do they make it into the top 8 right now, Typhus?
Yeah, I think they are well set to stay in the top 8 for
Cool.
a while now. They have few bad pairings, but also they perform well because they have something we like to call a critical mass of specific profile. So if you are not made to kill knights, you will get demolished, because previously you could play missions against them, now you cannot play missions against them. So I would say they are firmly in tier A. They are not a top army as they struggle. Coven still will be a problem. Tyranids will be a problem. They still need some luck in other matchups, as some armies from tier B can be really good against them. Not the tier B that we see now, but what I project will be in tier B moving further. So I would say they are firmly in tier A, and they are not going away from there anytime soon, I would expect.
Yes, I wholly agree with that. I
Okay.
They
think
are well above Admech.
yes, they're absolutely great. I think they are one of the best armies right now. I don't think they have very many terrible matchups. I think they struggle against some of the very top of the top, but that's basically it.
But
I think
that's
they feel that
struggling.
space
It's not like they will lose that matchup all the time. They can still cheat the wins.
So
Yes.
apart from stealing points and winning some points in a team tournament, would that codex have any other role? Like, does it make a good defender or an attacker? How would you approach?
Yeah, lately we've been using it as more of a defender in team setting because it needs tables. Like it really needs tables. But there are not many armies that are really confident into it. Like we've played last game against Canada, and they happily attacked our Renegade Knights with Sisters, and they estimated like winning 14-6 all the time. But then they realized when those knights play missions against army that is so efficient at killing those knights, suddenly you don't score so much. And we think that they can be sort of a cog blocker against specific armies. And also, if opponent's team isn't prepared, they can easily get a very good pairing if they find one like, I don't know, Grey Knights, and just score high because of that one.
Yes, I think it's important also to remember that why the Chaos Knights are the focus of ours. One of the reasons, actually, but one of the main ones is that they can summon, which is incredibly useful considering the missions that we are playing right now. You just need some infantry on the tables, which is was one of the weaknesses of Knights. And now if you can find some points for summoning units to help you achieve your missions, like score secondaries, I think they just fits in so well there.
So A, is it?
Absolutely
Yeah.
A. Top of A, probably.
Cool.
All right then. Moving on, Necrons. Necrons received quite a buff in the recent data slate. So have they really, or are they really that much better than they were before?
I think
Pumba?
they are absolutely better. I don't know if they're actually that much better. This is like Necrons are considered to be one of the worst armies in this edition, and at least the worst codex that has come out in 9th
At
by
least it
many
were.
people. But
And
I don't
right
think that was
now-
ever the case. I'm gonna be
And
honest.
right now, we might even think of choosing Necrons over Admech in Team Comp, to just give you a perspective.
I think in team setting, they were always one of the best defenders that you can ever bring to your team composition.
Especially that they were really good into Drukhari, which we caught so many teams on. That people thought maybe not the Coven Drukhari, but the previous squishy type of Drukhari. They were so effective and they could get those 10 points reliably, which you couldn't say about many armies in the game.
Yes, basically the combination of their survivability and like there are also so many builds that like just came across the meta for the whole year. There were Tomb Blaze, there were Scarab Swarmers, some Ctan. Now you have the revived meta of Wraiths and Scorpion destroyers or other destroyers through the data slate. They just are proving to be so reliable with their army-wide OPSEC. That they
And I would also mention why we think they are so effective is that we've been playing them all the time in the team comp using them as Zandrak, which I think gives one of the best utilities you can have in game right now, because that one use Vect, or how we call it Vect because of the 8th edition Drukhari, but it's such an utility that can swing your game by like even 10 points. So it's very, very powerful.
Yes, I think they are very much underappreciated in the ITC format, and they are just great in WTC, especially team events. I think in singles you are gonna struggle to to reach a high spot. They don't
because
usually
They
score
don't
big.
score high, do they?
Exactly.
And also a lot of times they scored like 9 points out of 20 against those top armies, which in win draw lose system I can see why they are so bad. But like in team composition, it's priceless.
It's a huge
to have an
9
army.
points.
Yeah, each point matters.
And if you can take those points reliably from the top dogs, that's like the biggest strength of a codex.
It's a loss that's a win, like Wembley in 1973 in football.
Yes,
Although
exactly
that was a
like
draw,
that one.
but still.
Exactly like that one. I don't even know what you're mentioning, but yeah, I suppose that's football.
Yeah, it is, but let's not go into the details then, as we seem to be struggling for time. So where do we put Necrons? A?
I think
Or-
they are
Above Admech, before Chaos Knights, in my opinion. Just for their utility in the team comp.
Fair enough. Oh geez, am I seeing it correct that Chaos Space Marines next?
Oh, that
That is
will be
correct.
quick.
Oh Jesus, that's so hard to actually.
Yikes.
They found some success in many soup lists during the year, but currently they just struggle in many ways the same as the normal Space Marines.
But they are worse.
But they are worse, kind of, yes.
Yeah.
They have more tricks. Their survivability is worse. They are a little bit cheaper. I think they just need new rules. The supplements didn't give them enough to make them competitive in this sense. I think
Well,
there
they
are
were
some
just-
super rules too.
They were just reprints, so
Yeah, exactly.
it didn't help.
Of course, you're getting a
Surprisingly.
surprisingly reprinting rules doesn't actually change the army. Yeah, I think the new codexes just make a beating out of the pairings with them. So I think they are C. I don't think they are as bad as the guard. I think they can still find some soup ideas, for example, with knights. But yeah, they just struggle across the board.
You would rather play solo knights.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, definitely. But like you said, they still have some tricks and they have some punch in combat, which probably Marines, depending on the supplement, might lack. So
C
is
it is.
probably a good place.
Yes.
Cool. How about Craftworlds? We know that a release is coming and it's going to come soon. But again, for the
And we all be
summary,
crying after it comes out.
exactly. Again, it's going to be a meta shift that everyone needs to adjust to probably. But until that happens,
There were no edition with new Eldar Codex that the Eldar weren't broken.
yep.
So
Let's drink to that.
so yeah.
God damn, I can't wait. I think currently Craftworlds are in a rough spot because of just the age of their codex and rules. Their units are understated, but they still have some tricks.
They were pretty good into Sisters and Drukhari in a similar manner that the Necrons were. But it was so swingy that this army kind of lost its main value when it came to team events.
Yes, but they did well, and they are still apparently to try. Like Canada just presented us with a Craftworld and Harlequin mix, the one that's pretty popular across the ITC formats from what I'm seeing, and that still can pull out some punches. But I think they just struggle with the top armies is their problem. I think they will completely dominate their meta in a couple of months, but for now I think they are somewhere in the C, maybe a bottom of B tier. I think
I would say they are in C tier. They have some play against armies from A tier, but they are nowhere near to being comfortable in the meta.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Next up, we have Dark Angels. You've seen some Dark Angels in Leicester, I guess. So what are your thoughts about that, Typhus?
So I think Dark Angels are actually one of the better Marines right now in terms of the whole metagame. That they can find a spot with how really strong, durable they are. They are quite decent into Covens and into Tyranids, which you can expect will be high in the tier list. So I think they have some place in the meta. They are one of those armies that we actually unironically thought about having in a team, and we had a long conversation with Pumba about them, that they might have some play. But other than that, they are still very, I would say, boring army, and you cannot be surprised when playing against them. You see what you get.
Well, yeah, but the boredom factor is not the one that makes a team go to WTC or not. Because if that was the case, then Brimstones and Nurgle.
Don't even mention that.
Yeah.
I want to sleep tonight, please.
Exactly. So so where do we put them?
I think they are the best Space Marines you can bring right now.
Yeah, I would say they are somewhere in B.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think so.
Rather high in B.
Rather high in B can actually make sense in some pairings into the top armies are still slow and overcosted.
But we're talking Terminator bricks mainly,
yes.
Or are we talking all flavors?
Yeah. We are talking Terminator's bricks because I think the Ravenwing build died with some of the changes that GW introduced some time ago.
Point-wise as well.
I think that obviously the Talmaster nerf and the Apothecary upgrade and stuff like that, they just lost 200 points from their list, which is more than the Drukhari lost in the current update, just to be clear. So yeah, I think that build, the all Ravenwing, just high, super aggressive, super fast. They weren't even that much of a glass cannon, to be honest, because of their invent. But yeah, I think they just lost too many points for that bit to work. I think we are considering Terminator blobs now, primarily.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Moving on. One of the, I think, most popular armies by the sheer fact that they were in a starter pack, Death Guard. What do you think about them? Because when I last listened to you on, I think it was the Polish national team podcast, you said that Death Guard is very much in line with Space Marines, if not worse. So has anything changed here?
Did it? I think Death Guard are sad codex for me. They are in the same card as Dark Angels because they had so much potential and everything looked so incredible when they came out, and then this just Drukhari demolished the actual game
And then
state of the meta.
Then
And then the
Admech
Admech made it worse, way worse, and they just never had the chance to recover. I think they are a fair codex, and I think they are too easy to play against. Let's say it this way. I think the codex is very much easy to play against when you are talking top tables.
And also, they are not that difficult to kill when you would expect from Death Guard.
Yeah, I think that's the main problem, right? They were supposed to be the most durable army. They not necessarily are.
Yeah, and then Covens happened.
Exactly.
Drukhari coming up. I think they are. The difference between B and C tier is gonna be a tough one for me always. I think I would
C tier armies I would never pick into team comp. B tier armies I could even think about.
I think we could think about some world in which you can bring a Death Guard into your team comp because you want an army that just doesn't lose as a defender, but they are so much worse than Necrons in this role that you just wouldn't. But I think there is a chance.
Durability and damage output, they are worse than Thousand Suns.
Yes. So I think they are in B tier. But they are just a worse version of either Thousand Suns, Necrons, or even Dark Angels, I think.
Okay. Fair. Joker, next one I have to start with you because that's the army you've been playing recently. So your thoughts on Drukhari and where would you place them?
I mean, we've had a chat on Messenger, obviously, before the podcast itself, and as the guys have said, Drukhari are probably, if not the only one, but definitely one of the codices that belong in the S tier, because no matter what happens, that codex is so well written in the sense of how powerful it is internally that it always seems to find a way to stay on the top and just provide points for your team reliably. So it has so many good matchups, and you can play so many different play styles. Sounds wrong. Play so many different play styles. Never mind. You can go Covens. Probably not as well as before, but you can just go, with Incubi, which is maybe not necessarily anymore, but I don't know, double Trueborn, what have you, and they'll just manage. They're efficiently costed. They can trade well. They can score points. The missions. It's like an army that does everything.
They are tier of their own.
I think after Admech got demolished by the Data Slate, I think Drukhari are actually the best army in the game, and there's a wide gap after them.
Yeah, I would say we would need to change the whole tier maker that we have right here and create another tier.
A separate tier.
I think they are actually so good. I think they are ridiculous in both team formats. I think they are the only army that I can think of that can reliably make a build that doesn't lose against anything in the meta.
That doesn't have a direct counter, let's say it that way.
Yes. Like you wouldn't ever, if you make a good singles build, you would never come to a table thinking that you don't have a good chance of winning. At least an even field.
Yeah,
and if you're talking teams, then you can just side into so many things at once that because you have so efficiently costed units that they just always fit into the team. Also, they are reliable. They are Exactly. They are reliable. They are fast. They can be a hitter army because of their speed. They can absolutely score 20 zeros. What can we say more? Like, it's been 4 nerfs to them. We are
Okay.
after the 4th nerf to Drukhari, and they are still absolutely fucking overpowered.
So I'll ask a different question again because I've listened to a lot of Squadcast, so the podcast that Ishik does. And when I listen to captains of different teams, they very often say that when they build their teams, they have those very skilled players that usually are left for the last, that they could get any army and get used to it and play. And then the people who are new to the national team or something like that, they will probably get the army that they feel most comfortable with. Drukhari, is this the army that any newcomer to the national team could easily navigate or pilot? Or would you give it to, like in Polish terms, would you give it to, I don't know, Vladi or someone like that? Or, would you give it to anyone? Typhus, what do you think?
I think that army can pilot themselves.
Okay.
So there's
It goes on
always a skill
autopilot.
factor. There's always a skill factor, but in so many pairings, you can just press a big red button and advance and charge with everything till the opponent is dead. That there's like no actual gameplay sometimes. You can get away with murder, with doing all the micro badly, doing all macro badly, and you'd still win 20-0. It's depressing even.
There are some pairings like that. I think so, yes. But also, I'm not a selector necessarily, but I used to captain like a team that went second in the Polish team championship, and in that case, I think it's important to have a player who is at least like very comfortable with that army there, because you have such high expectations of it to pull their win off.
Yeah, I think you should have a player
always expecting a win, right?
You should have a player who likes playing aggressively and for high scores.
Yes, you need a hitter. You need someone who will get their pairing and almost always, if not always, win.
Not only win, but also bring that huge big 20.
Yeah, and you would usually try to even navigate the pairings to cog block opponent's Drukhari, so their Drukhari doesn't get points as much as yours does, and at the same time, your Drukhari will get the good pairings.
In that sense, I think you need at least a player who is aggressively minded and has a good psychic resilience to stress and to pulling off expectations, because everybody will expect you to do really well with them. There's no other option. Like your margin of error is wide in case of games, because I think it's so easy to pilot and so overpowered compared to other codexes.
And forgiving. It's so forgiving.
Yes, it is. It is extremely forgiving. I know. I've played against many Drukhari, but at the same time, you just need to pull off that win every time.
So I thought that we would just put Drukhari in S and move on, but it is actually turning to be quite interesting. I have just one more question. How does this army fare in mirror matchups? Have you ever had that situation? Have you experienced that?
I think we did, but that was a long time ago on definitely a different Drukhari like rotation of a build or meta, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Coven Mirror is swingy as hell.
Coven Mirror seems like an absurd idea that you would never want to put your Drukhari into.
It sounds like 3 hours of your life wasted.
No. Those models will die. I know.
If there's someone that can kill Coven units, it's other Coven units and Drukhari, which is just what it is. But yeah, I think it's just really swingy in terms of especially just rolls, just straight up rolls.
Who goes first is also very important.
And mirror matches are like that though.
Yeah,
it's one of the it's one of the things that if you play a mirror match, sometimes you just lose or win in the single or couple of dice rolls. It's how it is.
Okay, I think we can close the topic of Drukhari and move on. Pumba, I'll throw Deathwatch at you, and especially, I have high hopes for that army, taking into consideration that we have Genestealer Cults incoming, Eldari coming really soon.
Damn, I thought you wanted to compare to the GSC.
No. No, but I wanted to hear, whether this army is good now and whether it has a future, because we have a lot of Xenos armies coming out. So
God
Pumba,
damn it!
go on.
That's my
Buckle up, kids.
To give you a perspective, Deathwatch was my first army. This is what I've started 40k with, and they never were a good army since I've played. Like, they had the briefest period in 8th when they were good after the codex went out, and
they were in the team that won ETC back then.
Exactly. They had the briefest period. They actually won the ETC, but overall they didn't fare well in the meta ever. And then the new supplement came out. They are no longer a codex. They are just a supplement for your Space Marines. So they lost a lot of flavor there. And in case of the rules, I think they are lackluster. I actually miss so much stuff from the previous codex in terms of
special issue ammunition.
Yes, or just mixing your teams, giving you rules straight up instead of you having to pay CP for stratagems for that. They have good relics.
I would say the best amongst Marines.
Yes, but on the other hand, the stratagems are pretty lackluster. They were good because of the relics. They had a play in like a heavy dreadnought spam lists, but they were never took off here. Like, Deathwatch was never considered. They are a niche army. I think I was actually one of the only people who tried them in the more competitive settings after their supplement came out. I was kind of impressed, but then they were just overtaken by Blood Angels for me in terms of just raw strength and actual fun of playing them. And now they have the weird build where they just go all infantry army of renown from the
Octarius. Move 6 inches a turn.
But that army just doesn't work. Like, I've seen.
I would like to clarify one thing here. Why Pumba says that. You cannot play in 20 new system just by standing on your objectives. You will lose. And you need to play aggressively, you need to play for the board, you need to push your opponent away, and those blobs of Marines don't do it.
I just don't see how that army survives any shooting in a good quality, good amount of shooting.
Or
talking Orks, how it survives the melee of Dark Eldar or Sisters, how it deals with 40 plus knights. I think they're all matchups of the top armies are just bad for them. And like,
I could see them playing into Admech. I can see them playing into Admech.
I guess so, yeah. But
from like, the armies we have
it's
here.
such a big difference between playing here with them and what we see from the Western tournaments and scene. Like in Leicester, there was a guy who went 4-1 with them, who took down one of the Drukhari's players there, Coven Drukhari. Still don't know how he did manage that, but hey. And Canada played this Army of Renown against that, and they even played against Sisters.
Which they estimated as a draw.
They estimated to get a draw against the Sisters, and they got destroyed 99 to 32 points. And
speaks volumes, right?
They
just don't work. I cannot see them work.
They were actually looking at our estimation tables. They were the worst army that Canada brought, even worse than Harleys.
Yes, so, I just don't see how they work, and I actually don't enjoy playing them as an army, like from a just player perspective. I think they're slow. They don't punch in hard enough, and they are not survivable enough for me.
So, not to make it all doom and gloom, I know that Denise in Australia plays them and praises them a lot. So if anyone here, anyone listening, knows how this army can be good, and they want to let us know in the comments, we would gladly take that on board. And we will gladly.
There's one thing that you should also take into account, which we already mentioned earlier. It's the tables we play on. I can see them Army of Renown or the Dreadnought lists being better on tables where they can shoot anything.
True.
Than they are when they can shoot only what their opponent allows them to shoot. Because movement of 6 and deep striking on smaller tables with a lot of ruins means you usually see jack shit.
So where do we put them?
I think they are as many, if not all, Space Marines as C tier army. And I like them less than the Blood Angels, I'm going to be honest.
And
agreed.
Just to add or maybe underline what Typhus said earlier, I mean, in the win draw lose system, if you get A180, that's all good. You might be getting somewhere, but on the differential score, that's a draw. It's a 10-10 that's not getting you anywhere near the top. So that's probably Deathwatches and the
entire Space
some
Marines
of the
cover.
armies that we've mentioned before. Main problem.
Absolutely, yes.
Drawy, immobile, whilst they don't provide potential of high scores, which, for example, Necrons do in certain matchups.
Fair enough. How about Grey Knights?
Oh yeah, I would love to hear
Space
Pumba
Marines
talking about this one.
The problem with Grey Knights on their current tier list is that we don't have an F tier to put them into, which is a a big oversight of this list, and I don't know what to do with them now.
Bigger than separate tier for Drukhari.
Holy shit, explain.
Would you like to dedicate that statement to anyone?
There's this guy in Polish community that just keeps telling me if I take 5 Nemesis Grey Knights, they are good then. But I just cannot trust this guy.
Who's that guy?
I think he's the selector as well, but I'm not sure.
Fucking Myson.
Exactly him. Nobody else. And being for real, now I think Grey Knights are an A-tier army, but not the best one you can bring. I think they have a lot of good matchups. They are the best, absolutely the best Space Marines. I don't count them as Space Marines just because they are not the actual Space Marine Codex. They are not a supplement. They are their own separate thing.
And in team comp, they can be fielded with Space Marines as a separate army.
Exactly. So they are Space Marine profiles, but they are not Space Marine Codex, so they are separate army. But yeah, they are definitely the best. They benefited a lot from just for some reason not getting so overpriced, comparing them to intercessors and other Space Marine chapter specific units is a bit silly because the interceptor is 24 points and my Sanguinary Guard is 32. That's stings.
At least you don't give up for the witch.
Yes, of course I don't. Thank you very much for reminding me.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Their Nemesis Dread Knights cost exactly the same as the Redemptor Dreadnoughts, and they are just better in every single way. One of the important things to mention is that they, and I think we do agree here, they do require 5 Dread Knights to work. And also, they are a fragile army in the meta, I believe. In terms of their internal balance of the codex is just garbage. I think it's Nemesis Dread Knights, Interceptors, and there is nothing
Full stop.
there. Yes.
Yeah,
Nothing
and
more.
if those units get nerfed, this army will disappear.
They are done. Yes, absolutely.
But most importantly, team tournaments. Where are they?
A tier.
Yeah, I would still take them in the team. They are they can play for 10 points in many matchups.
Yes,
But
they can pull off their wins and draws against the top armies.
Yeah, why we are so negative about them compared to what you can hear on other platforms, etc. This army, when we take into account playing against another top players, struggles a lot because armies, opponents who actually know how to screen efficiently and how to block all the tricks that Grey Knights have, greatly diminish their output and maneuverability.
They are a Dreadnought Space Marine, like Vanguard Veteran Dreadnought spam list, but better and more cost efficient. And with many
with
more
magic.
tricks.
And with better secondaries.
As well. So yes, they are just good in this sense. But they are standing on weak a fundament of basically
being Space Marines.
Being Space Marines that are not very survivable at all. And on two actual datasheets that are just holding them together.
And being too good in the scores around the world, so they might be due and revamped by GW, which might throw them straight into hell.
Remains to be seen. Moving on, because time is money. Genestealer Cults. For now, is there a lot to say?
For single armies, D, for how they are useful and how they make Tyranids insanely strong. They are, I would even call them C in terms of how impactful they are in the soup.
Okay.
I think this is a difficult one because they just soup with Tyranids so well, and they provide so much there. And just because of that, I think they're C tier, or top of C tier, because they don't work as a solo army too well, especially against the top matchups. I think there's some play there. You can rely heavily on their tricks, which are still good, even now. And their ability to just cancel alpha strikes completely, like 100% you will not get alpha strike, is invaluable. Either if in the Tyranid soup or if they're play solo. I think they are better than the guard, for sure.
And they have a high skill cap, I believe.
They have incredibly high skill cap, yes.
So they belong in C, at least for now. We shall see next year. Right, Typhus, this one is yours. Harlequins.
Yeah, that's another army that relies on 2 datasheets. And
just because they have 5.
No, they have 8, including one
I'm
way
so
gate.
sorry.
Get your facts
ignorant.
straight. Ignorant. Yeah, it's those space wolves. They think only about ale. Yeah, this army, like, it's got hit by all the new codices as well. They are a similar case of Custodes. I think they are really similar to Custodes. They were so good in team comp because they had few matchups that they were insanely good in, but then new releases became very problematic for them. And even though you could see their place in the meta because they can play into Knights, they can play into Sisters, they can play against Grey Knights actually as well, in my opinion. It's just they suck so much against some top armies. Like Covens just chew you out, and you come off the other side. I would say this army, like in the combination with Reapers, you could make an argument of having them in the team comp because of certain armies being present in that team comp. But it's an army that if you choose it for the team, it's like 8th choice, purely dependent on the meta. But depending on the meta, you can actually think about it. I don't know if you agree with me, Pumba.
I do agree with you. And I can't wait to get Shredder by some goddamn kisses and caresses when the Elder Codex comes out with them in it.
I would love if actually we would get a point in the meta that Harleys are good, like top of the meta. Because if a tricky army is the best army in the game, it speaks well of the game. Well, currently it's not a thing.
Do you think Harleys are going to be? Yeah, sorry, go on, Joker.
Yeah, thanks. You had that when Ninth came out. I think Harleys and Custodes had like the biggest win ratio at that
because
point
they were tricky and people didn't know how to play against them.
And they scored well because
they played great. The mission's great, They
Yeah,
had all
exactly.
the tools to just call primary, deny your opponent's primary. They played the secondaries well with their movement.
But
Comparing
with new
them
codices,
with
they became very inefficient
yes,
in killing.
yes, absolutely. They just lack the damage now. They were
And I think they were really good until Drukhari and Admech.
oh yeah.
And then it started going downhill.
Well, isn't there a theme here?
Yeah.
Seems to be. Do you think that they are going to have a separate book, or are they going to be in the Eldar Codex?
I don't care.
This is just a straight up guess. I think they will be pulled into a codex with Linari and Craftworlds into the same codex. But pure speculation here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what the rumors say, although that sounds like potential of another book wasted where you can gain some money. So I don't know. We'll see.
So we shall see. Where do we
Yeah.
place them?
I think they are somewhere in the B tier. Like I would say they are above Death Guard, but in the current meta, they are below Dark Angels.
Yes.
Okay.
Just between Dark Angels and Death Guard seems
Like
absolutely good for me.
I would say right now they are like the second best army in B tier.
I agree.
All right. Since we want to be conscious of time and we don't want this to last 3 hours, Pumba, can you just cover Space Marines with the different flavors that we have really quickly?
Yes, I think it's a good idea. So, Imperial Fists are hot garbage, and no one plays them, and never will. They are the worst Space Marine chapter. The bottom of sea still, because Guard exists. Raven Guard have great tricks. They just super lack sheer power. I think they are better than Black Templars and worse than Blood Angels. Salamanders. So basically C tier between Blood Angels and Black Templars. Salamanders are kind of survivable, but not really. They can melt a spam like hell, which makes them a little bit interesting considering the Knights doing very well right now, and like Coven and Nemesis Dreadnought spam. So there might be a build there. So around Blood Angels, maybe something like that. C tier still, of course. Whole Space Marines, C tier. Who would have thought so? Space Wolves, there were arguments for literal weeks about which supplement is better, Blood Angels or Space Wolves, and I don't think there's a conclusion there. I think they are very similar in this regard and still remain so.
Both bad.
Agreed.
Both, yeah, but at the same time, better than many other chapters.
Yeah, than Guard, for example.
Then we have Iron Hands, which are, as we know, the best army in the game that can reliably win any ITC event ever. C tier, of course, because turns out if you have -1 damage across the whole game, your Contemptor Dreadnoughts actually don't do anything, and you're
unless you're 1,000 Suns.
Yes, or obviously, I've lost so many Terminators to the Contemptors. I'm not even kidding. But yeah, don't even talk to me about the Redemptor Dreadnoughts. They don't do anything. So yeah, I think they're still very strong. They have a great Alpha Strike potential. They are the best Space Marine chapters right now in terms of raw strength. I'm gonna say that. Still C tier. Ultramarines. Invictors can actually redeploy after you start the game, which is their biggest strength, which I've used many times. They are a C tier army and one of the worst chapters. I like them though. White Stalkers are worse than... No, they are better than Blood Angels, I think still. They just lacks raw damage, but they have a lot of tricks, so they are like better Raven Guard because they get advanced charge,
+1 damage. Their +1 damage doesn't work right now.
Exactly, because their super reduction basically doesn't exist. Are we done with Space Marines?
I think we are. That was quick. Thank you for that. That's out of the way. Moving on. Typhus, Imperial Knights.
Considering all of the Space Marines bad in Polish meta. Yeah. Which is a statement, but yes.
Pumba, you're like the opposite of Kupcho.
Yeah, you can be very concise, which
So
we appreciate.
you've done 8 armies in like 2 minutes, and he'd do 1 in 8. Probably, so well done.
We love you.
You mean one supplement?
One
Yeah,
data sheet.
Oh. Yeah, Pumba doesn't throw his words on the wind. Anyway, or if there is an even idiom like that in English, I don't know. Anyway, speaking about Imperial Knights, they are worse than Grey Knights. Yeah, they are. No, not really, maybe, but they are worse than Chaos Knights because of the objectives we mentioned. The Free Blade Lance seems like a great idea to make yourself hella confused what's happening on the table, and which unit is which. And I think they are straight up worse than Chaos Knights. And the main strength of them is that if you want to field few big knights, they are better than Chaos Knights. But if you want to play armigers, they are way worse. And I think armigers are the way to go right now, rather than the big knights. So I would say they are somewhere in A. I would say below Chaos Knights, below Necrons, but higher than Grey Knights. But you don't want both Grey Knights, Imperial Knights, and Chaos Knights in the team, I would say.
I actually can see a world in which you have Chaos Knights and Imperial Knights in your 8 armies you take to the WTC, by the way.
Yeah, you can do
There
that.
is a world in
for
which that
now.
happens, by the way.
For now, I wouldn't do that.
Yes. So they are A. They are very good with the changes. The Free Blade Knights is nice, but just worse than Chaos Knights. Yes.
Okay, clear. How about the Orks? Who wants to take them?
Pumba, you must love playing against them, right?
Yes, looking at the Scrapjet datasheet for 90 points makes me cry to myself to sleep, if you ask me.
Yeah,
Yes.
but when you compare them to
Consistent.
land speeders, they are surely worse.
Of course, and like to a Templar Dreadnought, which actually gets outgunned by the one goddamn Scrapjet. Orks are disgustingly underpriced, and it's important to say we will be talking about top builds, which is ramshackle spam. I don't think the codex is Drukhari level of internal balance. Like
It's
nowhere
the
near
worst
that.
codex, I would say.
In
terms
case
of
of
balance.
internal balance, yes. I think it is codex that is heavily reliant on the ramshackle spam. We are talking underpriced buggies, underpriced Deathcopters, maybe. Sometimes you can feel the kill rig, I think. But generally, there are a few avenues to take them, like freebooters, maybe new speed mob with the bikers, OPSEC bikers, especially new secondaries may play into that. But overall, I think they are an S tier army that is just oppressively underpriced.
And also, that's an army that, in hands of a player who doesn't really know what they are doing, can still win games against top armies. So, yeah, it's bad for the game if you have very strong shooting that you cannot kill.
But,
So yeah, I completely agree. It's definitely worse than Drukhari because it doesn't have its own tier, but it's up there.
Still S tier?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we have the Sisters.
I would say they are S tier as well. They struggle against Drukhari and Needs, and their pairing against Needs and also Orks can be very problematic. Is horrendous. Like Needs just choose Sisters, but they got better in the meta when the Admech got nerfed, and also when with the release of Grey Knights and Thousand Suns as two armies that Sisters can prey upon.
I'm gonna be honest. I think they are on top of A army, not S. Just because if let's make a small spoiler here, I think Tyranids are going into S tier currently.
Surprise.
Just because if you look at the S tier armies, they are the only one that just loses against every single one of them.
And Sisters also have problem with, for example, Necrons or Harlequins, which
Yes.
makes more issues.
The disappearance of Admech is a small renaissance to them, because they were a very competent and strong and incredibly competitively priced codex when they came out. They are incredibly good against Space Marines. They will be good against Thousand Suns. They will be good against Grey Knights. They have great pairings. They can side well against the Knights, which is incredibly important considering team play.
But you need Repentia.
But you need Repentia.
Spoiler.
Alert. Play Repentia, guys. It's pretty good. But I think they are a top of a army just because they just lose against the S tier armies. That's the main reason for me.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say that Chaos Knights are better than Sisters right now.
Somewhere there, yes. But definitely close.
All right, so I'm putting them into A then. Great. Just a couple of armies left. A couple of armies left because we have some duplicates, so we're not going to go through all of them. But 3 left, I think.
Yeah.
So, Tau.
Hello, guard, my old friend. There's a reason that Tau fields some guardsmen, right?
There is.
Tau bad. Go next.
Pretty much.
They
Go
will
next.
be getting their codex in a few
Yeah,
weeks,
hopefully
or
it makes
maybe
them.
not. Yes.
Hopefully it
They
makes
are
them
coming
better, but not
Things
that
are correct.
much.
Yep.
But I think Tau suffer the same problem to Astra Militarum, where it's a mainly shooty army, and you need to be a really good shooty army or have some movement tricks or what have you.
You need to be
Knights.
Admech.
I think just from designing the army and making a codex that can play, that's a challenge in itself, because you have an army that effectively works in just one phase, and it is a challenge to make it balanced and not tip it one way or the other, where it's either unplayable or unplayable,
Admech.
Admech style unplayable. So
I think it's
interesting to see.
Yeah,
I think
not
it's
the
interesting
most.
in the sense that there were times, I remember those, where this tier would be just flipped, and you would consider Imperial Guard and Tau to be the best shooting armies in the game, while Adverts struggled so much. They just got new units in with good rules.
Almost
And I
agreed.
think it's really easy for me to imagine a world where Tau is just oppressively good.
With no loss shooting on every unit.
Mm-hmm.
For example,
It's
I can see this.
I don't know if you guys remember squeak buggies, but they were pretty good, right?
Yeah, pretty
I
good.
I haven't
yeah.
seen those in a while, for like a day, I think.
And I
Yeah,
think the marks are
nowadays
like
I
here.
only see 3. Wonder why.
But mhm.
No, but that I fully agreed with Bomba. But I mean, I think that really from 8th to 9th, the change in scoring or like how you score the missions, and the fact that, or maybe not as much how the tables have changed in that they've got more terrain now. That's just really hindered both Tau and Guard to oblivion.
True.
Yes,
So
but yes, they are definitely really bad. There is nothing to argue about here. But I think I would be hopeful if I were a Tau player. I think they are coming up, and they will be even
I'm
oppressive.
preparing to get fucked by that army.
Yes,
I'm
this is
ready.
one of the armies that I can see absolutely breaking the meta in half when they come out.
Like Elder, yeah.
same.
And I think a lot is going to depend on just a small number of things. So no loss shooting and how much they're going to have,
smart missile systems. You mean by
and
small
marker
things.
lights probably. That's
Yeah.
right. Okay, Tyranids.
Yeah.
Tyranids
Have
are
you
a
heard
problem.
about squeak buggies?
I thought I heard they
Echo?
are good. And
Have you heard about better squeak buggies though?
Yeah,
we've had squeak buggies at home. Now we have fucking Hive Guard. I think Tyranids.
Codex Hiveguard.
Let's not beat around the bush. Tyranids are an S tier army, in my opinion. I think the Typhus won't argue with me here,
No.
but I think it's important to just understand how weird that is, because they are an old army that relies so heavily on one unit in the whole codex, which is just incredible to me.
And 2 stratagems, basically.
So
And it's just oppressively good at it. I
Yeah,
think
but
it's incredible.
I think if you factor in all the buffs that you can give to that one unit, that's probably like the best unit in the game.
It might be. It very
It might
well
be.
might be. Yes.
It might fight with Drazar for that title.
So I know we didn't get to see a lot of it, just because there haven't been many tournaments or enough global tournaments even to see the Army of Renown in play. But do you think that this build, this potential Army of Renown build, could step in and be a reliable part of a team composition?
I assume you are talking about the Nidzilla
Crusher
like big
Stampede
motors.
thingy.
Yeah.
We don't know yet,
Yes.
basically.
To be honest, we have no experience in playing this new Army of Renown. I think it looks incredible, but I think it might find like a similar place to AdMech Veteran Cohort, which was not necessarily an straight upgrade to the list, but a side grade, which is
Good.
interesting. I think good, but it will. Both of these lists will rely on Hiveguard, by the way. I think if you're playing like Nidzilla Crusher Stampede, or you're playing with your small swarm like Hormagaunts, Termagants, or Genestealers, I think both of these builds will rely heavily on Hiveguard. I think it's interesting in terms of team compositions that you can make Tyranids kind of anti-tank check against your opponent's list, similar to Knights, let's say.
And Covens.
And Covens, for example, yes. All of these armies have a potential of just throwing incredible amounts of high toughness invo wounds now, just at you, and try
to build a
make
whole
you...
team around being a tough anti-tank, tough tanky army.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we can just. It can just play against your opponent in the sense that they will not find enough anti-shooting in their team composition to break.
But compared to Chaos Knights, they don't have OPSEC, or if they do, they have it on one model.
Yes.
So that's the difference.
I'm gonna be honest. I think the new in the current scrim against Canada, Tyranids were the army that nobody wanted to play against because it all is coming down to a roll-off. If they start, they will just redeploy and blow you off the table most of the time. And if they don't find enough space in their deployment to hide all of the Hiveguard, or at least most of them, many armies will do the same to them. So depending on the build, I think they are one of the more backbreaking and meta-breaking armies in the game. And I think they straight up just are horrendous to the game and to the meta and to the player experience.
They create non-games, basically, which you never want to.
Yeah, non-interactive games are a no-no.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and they are one of the most egregious examples. Like Orks were up there with like 9 squeak buggies, but just Hiveguard are this better. And they will blow you off the table and you cannot hide. I think there's just a problem in the game in the non-loss shooting, as well as the aircraft. Like GW agreed with the community that the aircraft were a problem, so they limited them, but no-loss shooting is a similar fashion problem, which hasn't been just addressed yet. And I think there will come a time that it will get changed somewhere.
It will have to be tackled, yeah, somehow.
Exactly.
Right, but for now, S tier it is. And to round it off, the last army, and again, Joker, I'll pass the mic to you. Thousand Sons. Where are they? How do you feel about them?
Again, I think Pumba could say more because he's been playing them at a higher level and probably more often recently. But I think that's probably an underestimated army, but one that will give you high wins. So they can pack a punch. but obviously as a more defensive playstyle kind of army, you struggle to just score high. So, but I think the guys who agree with me, they could still be placed in A tier because they've got a fairly good matchups. Although after the recent rise of Knights, Orks, and Tyranids as well, it's probably looking a bit worse for them.
I think as a Thousand Suns player, I think they're hovering just on the edge of being in the top 8 best armies. Their biggest problem being the top armies are not necessarily a good matchup. I think they can play against most of the stuff. They have kind of defender qualities in which they in that they are oftentimes built around survivable blocks of Terminators, which are very hard to move for many armies. The Cult of Duplicity can provide them with incredible mobility compared to, for example, Dark Angels in this sense, because let's say they are similarly built armies most of the time, but Thousands are just outmaneuver them greatly.
Shoot.
And they shoot extremely well compared to Dark Angels Terminators. But
Despite
they will
lacking
struggle.
0+ save.
But they will just struggle against the top of the top armies. But it's not like you're going to any matchup absolutely defeated. I don't think there's a single matchup in which the Thousand Suns will get crushed to 0 points or even to 5. I think with smart play, optimal play, and a good list, you can pull off pretty
I think
much
Covens are currently one of the worst pairings you can get.
Definitely. And I'm literally working on it. If there's an answer to that list, to the Coven list.
Mutation.
And maybe it's Cult of Mutation with the Brokenness spell, which can make wonders actually happen. But yeah, I think they are A, but they are just on the edge of being playable. They have a couple of really difficult matchups in the top, but they are a very competent army.
I have nothing to add.
Sorry, I was on mute. So A tier then, or top
Yes,
of B?
A tier.
A tier.
I think
All
it's
right.
still A tier, better than Custodes. Definitely better than Demons, so yeah.
Better than all the armies in B tier, basically.
Definitely, yes.
Okay. So there you have it, guys. This is the tier list to rule them all. The way how the Polish competitive players perceive the meta right now, and how they would place these. Just a reminder, mainly for team compositions, mainly for team games. But it was very interesting to hear. So thank you, Typhus, thank you, Pumba, and thank you, Joker, for your reviews, your insights, and for letting us into that very hermetic world of team play and competitive play. I think our listeners will appreciate that. And I mentioned our listeners, so I'll take this opportunity, since this is the last episode of the year. I just wanted to thank all our listeners and subscribers who are with us, who join us every week and listen to us on a regular basis. Remember, if you haven't subscribed, please do that. Leave a like. Follow us still. We are on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube, and all the podcasting platforms. And we're not going anywhere. As a matter of fact, we're developing, we're getting bigger, and we hope to see more of you next year. Have a fantastic year, and stay with us. Typhus, Pumba.
Yes.
Sorry.
What's up?
Pumba.
Yeah, we would like to stay with you for a year, but sorry, man, I've got other things to attend.
No.
to, so-
I'm just laughing because I completely butchered your names. So Typhus, Pumba, Joker, thank you for this episode. It's been a pleasure to listen to you guys.
Pleasure as well. Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Yep.
thanks guys for coming in.
And so, I guess, until next time. Thank you, everyone. Have a good 2022. Bye-bye.